So tell us why the EU and Japan trade deals, I use the term under advisement, are significant or not.
Well, they're significant for a start because Trump went to Scotland, played a lot of golf, promoted his golf courses, and made deals. What's not to like? Even the weather wasn't too bad. It didn't rain too much, or maybe it did. Maybe I didn't notice it. Um, so we must all buy the art of the deal. So what happened in Scotland, or rather, what happened on Trump's golf course? European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen showed up to pay homage to Emperor Trump in Brexit Britain and was rewarded with a preliminary trade agreement. What is this trade agreement? Well, the US will impose 15% tariffs on European exports, especially cars. Some European goods will face zero tariffs, such as aircraft, ship-making equipment, chemicals, and raw materials. In return, the EU will buy more American fuel and AI chips and invest $600 billion in America. The US also agreed a trade deal with Japan. It lowers tariffs on this deal, lowers tariffs on cars and other goods to 15%. In return for the Japanese investing 550 billion in the US. So the EU is going to invest 600 billion, the Japanese 550 billion. That makes it over $1 trillion. Also, Japan will always receive the lowest tariff rate on chips and pharmaceuticals of all the pacts negotiated by Washington. Unlike the US-EU deal, there was no joint statement on the US-Japan deal. So Glenn, what does this deal making mean? Well, and you can add to the points I have, and we can take it forward. Well, number one, I think we have avoided all-out trade wars. So we are not quite in smooth, holy territory of the 1930s. Number two, the US is still the 800-pound gorilla in the room. Number three, the US can and is throwing its weight around. Number four, both the EU and Japan have decided to appease the US. Number five, the rules-based free trade order is now dead, and the World Trade Organization, the WTO, is irrelevant. Number six, the deals themselves are ephemeral, increasing volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, VUCA, in trade, business, and the economy. Over to you, Glenn.
Yeah. So here's where I actually do have something to try to say. First, a detail, which is substantive. A detail might imply that it's not that significant, but I think this is telling. I'm a strong supporter of U.S.-Japan relations, and I think the Japanese have done as well as one can do in the current context. But one of the consequences of the U.S.-Japan agreement now is that cars manufactured in Japan and then sent to the United States, sold in the United States, are subject to lower tariffs than cars that will have been manufactured in part or whole in Canada. Detroit is a city right on the U.S.-Canadian border, and Windsor, Ontario is just across the border and is essentially part of Greater Detroit, or you could say Detroit is part of Greater Windsor, however you want to describe it. And the automobile industry is astride the factories and the offices and the business. Literally sit astride the U.S.-Canadian border there. So now Japanese cars will benefit from lower duties than cars made, quote, in Canada. Canada has the longest border of the United States, is the closest ally the U.S. has, the largest trading partner the United States has, and so on. And if we've done in the Canadian-American auto industry, I don't know, but it certainly hurts it relative now to Japanese imports. That's just one of the infinite number of details where these what we'll call the bilateral trade deals which I think glorifies them more than they deserve, will distort economies of scale, trade flows, capital flows, and the most efficient allocation of resources and development of the U.S. economy or any other economy that's involved, touched upon by these. So your second point, the U.S. is still the 800-pound gorilla in the room. I think the significance of the deal making is that most people in my lifetime, perhaps not most, but many, and certainly a majority of the progressive strains of non-American populations have their default position is that the United States has queered the system for its own benefit and was hypocritical, and it was really this imperialist power. And much of that is really, frankly, wrong. And I think what we are seeing now is, in fact, the realization of what the U.S. has been criticized for having been. And it shows the contrast between the normative system, imperfect as it has been, compared to a might makes right system of spheres of influence and bilateral deals, which is where we are now. And I wrote a piece assessing what the Trump administration meant for the U.S. and for the world right when Trump was elected. And the title is Nastier and More Brutal. And others and I have been saying for a long time that the normative system was struggling, and this is largely its death knell. As you said, Atul, in your sixth point, or fifth point, rather, but the rules-based trade system being dead now. And we'll see that. So the consequences are most countries, almost no country, can afford, literally and figuratively, to challenge the United States right now on issues that the U.S. Decides are significant. That even includes the European Union, which is one of the three largest economic powers in the world. And the consequences of that are some deals for the United States that sound nice, but in fact will lead to less efficiency for the United States itself, and certainly for everybody else. And this is an historic and terrible shift or development in the world order, or now disorder. It is the triumph of the system that Xi Jinping, Vladimir Putin, and Donald Trump, or the thinking faction of the Republican Party that supports him, have been pushing for. And we will all pay the consequences, whatever the herd of buffaloes, or I should say bulls, are momentarily saying on Wall Street.
So, in a nutshell, more uncertainty as we've been predicting as at FY, the geopolitical risk arm both of you are part of, more business uncertainty, and we can expect rising inflation, rising interest rates, rising costs of doing business, disrupted
if
supply
I can jump
chains.
in and really underscore that point, there's been a lot of crowing by the administration, of course, meaning the Trump administration, and by conservatives and by observers in general, saying, oh my goodness, the economy still is strong, interest rates are low, inflation is not very high, investment remains up, look at the stock market, all of this seems great. Okay, if you take your introductory course in micro and macroeconomics, you'll learn that the shortest term interest rates, say 3 to 6 months, treasury bonds and so on, if they rise or fall, the effects on the economy take, generally speaking, this is broad brush, but generally speaking, 6 months before they start to show any effects. That's for the shortest term rates. If you take longer term rates, like 18 months, a year, 18 months or longer, for those to have a measurable effect on the economy, a substantive, not a reaction by a market, but a deeper effect on investment, hiring, and so on, That takes 18 months, 18 to 24 months. So we're now in month 6.5 of the Trump administration. And the changes, rapid as they've been, and I'll give him credit for being rapid in many of his actions, have literally not had time to work their way through the economy. Now, tariff increases too. The effects have been a reaction out of anticipated consequence so far, because Trump has said everything and nothing simultaneously. And only now are certain rates settling in, which other people have noted are the highest tariff rates since 1930. And all economists agree that one of the important factors contributing to the Great Depression, where there was 25% or more unemployment in the United States for 5 years or so, and similar devastation in Europe, if not worse, came in part because of tariffs and the inability of debitors, which was European nations, to pay their bills because they couldn't conduct trade as they needed to, or obtain capital as they needed to pay their bills to the United States, which then, not being paid for bills owed it, couldn't buy anything. So what we're seeing has not had has not had time to work its way through the economy. And I frankly think that people are whistling past the graveyard, or they're deluding themselves, and many are sincere in their optimism. But the consequences are real. The gravity exists, and if the motor stops, the plane will come down. And that's what will happen. That simply is, it's a fact.
Brilliant. For those of you who want to read more, learn more, we have a German economist named Alex Gloy. He is in the audience today. We have a Japanese economist named Masaki, both of whom write very regularly, write pretty detailed stuff with graphs, numbers, etc. If you want to discover more about what's going on in the metal space, whether it is gold and silver and platinum and palladium, we have an Indian economist and political analyst, Manu Sharma, who's also in the audience today. And he's been talking a lot about it. So lots to deep dive into, but
join the conversation at Fair Observer and subscribe to our YouTube channel.